left, right.
So I want to tell you where SipTalk came from. These guys were sitting in the office one night. They've been drinking, they've been working, they stopped working, they got into this conversation, they kept drinking. They realized the conversation was going somewhere kind of interesting, and they started recording themselves. And they recorded this, they turned it into a podcast. They threw out 2 episodes, and that's where I took over because so much time went by and they weren't following up, but I thought it was a great idea. So I've commandeered it. This is SipTalk. You were listening, you were watching SipTalk. But this episode has one of the original guys. His name is Midhet Josic, and he'd had a couple of drinks before we started, but we didn't have much of a linear conversation. But I'm hoping you find some of the content interesting, you enjoy the back and forth, and I appreciate you being here. If you are watching or you are listening, wherever you are listening or watching, there are some links below, the links included, wherever it is. Check them out. There's some cool stuff, some free money, some free stocks. I would invite you to check it out because it does help the podcast. So thank you very much. Happy you're here. See ya. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy.
Of course, it's good.
Cheers.
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 We are live, episode 48 of SipTalk. We're missing James, the Bosnian Boswell today, but we have Andreas Battaglia here, connoisseur, sommelier. Where else are we going with your professional designations here? He's been drinking, so we'll leave it at that. And we're missing the Bosnianer, but we have a Bosnian. We have Midhet Josic. He's also had a couple of cocktails this afternoon, so he's happy to be joining us. We're going to be talking about politics a little bit as the debate is looming. As of our recording, we got the debate in a couple of hours. We're looking forward to that. It's probably why these guys are drinking.
After you said that, I had to.
Yeah, as much as they are. Mito, we call Midhet. Mito is strengthening his cocktail. Today I got some Buchanan and Coke, some Pepsi Max. And
why don't you call that a cocktail?
That's a cocktail.
All right.
It's a cocktail. Less fruity and sugary.
True.
Same thing, but it's sugar-free. Mito was talking about politics a little earlier. I don't like to talk about politics very much, as it tends to be pretty divisive.
I've always believed that there are 3 things men will never agree on: politics, sports, and religion. So regardless of wherever those 3 topics, we will never agree on. He will always think that his thing is better than mine, his political views are better than mine, or his religion is better than mine. We always have those.
No, but you could agree on certain things as intellectual individuals. As human beings, you can agree on certain things.
But when it comes to politics, intellectuals debate back and forth, and people have different morals, different backgrounds. You can have a very intellectual conversation about politics, just like you guys are discussing right before we started about free market leases and the fact that they're going to start regulating rents. They're going to start, regulating rent increases. We had a client today who didn't want to pay an extra $18 a month, but was willing to prepay the lease in full and didn't feel that she needed to hire a lease insurance company at the cost of $18 extra a month when she had the money in the bank and was willing to prepay. Now, we had to explain, because of this law that came out last year, it's now illegal to prepay rent, which it's going to cost. If she pays monthly, it costs her the same as if she pays all the months up front. But because paying all the months up front is now illegal, her only other option to give the landlord added security is to hire a guarantee service, an insurance service, effectively a corporate guarantor, which is now an additional cost to her. So this law has really backfired for her. And we've talked about this law before.
And it's leaving a lot of people homeless as well, because New York City especially is a city of a bunch of immigrants legal and illegal immigrants. And when you are a legal immigrant in New York City, it's hard for you to build credit. So credit takes between 3 to 4 years to actually, be a robust credit of 720 and up, or even 650 and up. And that's doing everything correctly, paying everything on time, not utilizing more than 30% of your credit cards. That's how you get into good credit. Most of these people that come here on the legal way or are here legally, they cannot obtain an apartment with these current laws because one, they don't have good credit.
They don't have credit at all.
Or they don't have credit at all. And some of them are just students.
Well, let's
Students don't
discuss
have
our
Social Security.
well, students may have Social Security, but let's discuss our perspective. We're in Manhattan. There's very high demand, which even when the demand isn't high, it's way higher than most other areas. So landlords can be more discriminating when it comes to, they're not discriminating, I don't mean discriminating on race or age or sex or whatever, but they're discriminating on financials, which I think is a reasonable thing to be discriminating on.
Yeah.
So the landlords are discriminating on finances, and they typically set a requirement at 680 or 700 credit score and someone earning 40 times the monthly rent. So if the rent is $2,000, which is a very low, pretty reasonable, but low on the scale of Manhattan rents, $2,000, they have to earn $80,000 for the year. Which $80,000 for the year, roughly
Somewhat an average.
$60,000 or so take home after tax, roughly. I don't know exactly what the tax rates are right now. And then $24,000 of that is going to be going towards rent. So that leaves them with $36,000 in living expenses that they can put on whatever else they have going on in life. I think that sounds pretty reasonable. I see a lot of credit reports, and I think under 680, there's a reason that it's under 680. That national average credit score is about 720 or 740, something like that. So when you're seeing 680, something's going on. So landlords are asking for additional security. But what you're saying is it's difficult to achieve a 740 credit score.
That's not the issue. We're talking about people that are just coming into the country with nothing.
It's difficult to achieve a credit score
But they have savings.
when you're coming with nothing.
Yes, like nobody. Okay, we have immigrants coming, okay, fine. But a lot of those immigrants, maybe half of them have savings in their account that they could prepay maybe 3 or 4 months, and they still have.
Which is traditionally what we've done in New York City with internationals, is have someone prepay 3 or 4 months or pay extra security deposit, which doesn't go towards rent but acts as a buffer. But someone who just went on vacation in other countries, which we talked about last time you were here,
Right.
How easy is it to be in a new country and spend a shit ton of money?
Very easy.
Yeah, we talked about being in an airport, and for some reason when you're in an airport, it's okay to drink at 9 a.m. Well, when you're on vacation, it's all of a sudden okay to blow $400 or $4,200 on clothes when you go shopping, which is wild. I'll go to the store here and be like, I only will buy one thing, and I'll be very discriminating with what I buy.
Yeah.
When I go on vacation, I'm like, yeah, I'll get 3 pairs of shoes.
I do it differently because I plan for the vacation and I budget for that vacation. So if I have this money saved up, I'm gonna blow,
You're gonna blow all of it.
on the budget on the vacation. It's not like I set a different. I was just like, this is the bond that I'm gonna spend, and I have to allocate that to it.
Sure, but point is, you can go through a lot. You can go through a lot of. You can go through a lot of money.
Costs,
You go through a lot of money,
Yes.
and also being new to a country, you have unexpected costs. So
Oh, yeah, 100%.
if the rent is going to cost $2,000 a month, and you have 30 grand in the bank account, you
Okay.
might be thinking, if you pay 24,000 right off the bat to rent, landlord's taken care of. But if you think that 24,000 of the 30,000 is just going to sit there and you're going to chip away at it while you make rent payments, there's a really good chance you think you got that 6,000 buffer, but you got the extra couple of thousand just in case, and you may not budget as well when you got 30 grand in the account, right? You see where I'm going with this?
I know, but like a lot of people are renting apartments in their city, and especially in Manhattan, are not that dumb.
You don't think so?
Not really.
I think a lot of young people, especially students, can go
No,
through.
that's student because it's different. It's a different thing. It's a different thing. We're talking about people that have
Under 30s.
immigrated to this country versus students. Students is a different thing. It's a whole other different topic. Like a
Well,
person that
I'm-
migrated here with like $40,000 in his bank account is different than a student.
Well, I'll give you.
That's from
I want to just touch on immigrant mindset. When you're an immigrant and you come to the U.S., you're typically really focused on work and savings.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a different mindset. But that's not how it is for everybody. If I was to go to
be like pay whatever you want to the landlord and you could ask whatever you want.
If I was to go to Bosnia with 40 grand in my bank account,
Right.
I would be spending it much differently than someone in Bosnia coming to New York, to immigrating to New York with 40 grand in their bank account. I would probably go through it much more quickly than the inverse side of that.
Yes.
But
You're going there on
but-
vacations.
but
coming
point
here
is,
to work.
now we're talking individual spending styles, and the landlord can't account for that. Like when somebody says, I have a Rottweiler, but he's a good Rottweiler. Landlord's, well, if you said he's good.
No, but I think we're on the same point, but I think
Sure.
with
but-
the law being flexible, but now it's not flexible.
But let's,
It's not flexible.
Because apparently this law wanted to protect landlords that wanted to take advantage of immigrants. Let's just keep on the topic of immigrants. That you give 6 months in advance because you don't have a social security or you don't have a credit. Yeah, so you go and give them 6 months, and once your lease is done, probably there's somebody else that wants to pay $100 extra on the same apartment that you're currently living, and the landlord was like, okay, I have to kick you out. So he takes the 6 months of
so
security
you lose bargaining power once you prepaid.
Exactly.
So that's the downside
Yeah.
of prepaying.
If you prepaid and you have that
prepay
money,
6 months and you have a 12-month lease, you said for that.
What if you prepay
once
12
you-
months and then you need to you feel maybe there's an infestation or the electricity doesn't work? You no longer have the bargaining power, your legal right to withhold rent, and that's the downside with doing that.
No, I can see that. Yeah, that's what I'm
and then again, that in New York, the market before this pandemic happened kept increasing more and more and more. The price of the
Listen,
apartment.
you're still in that circumstance. You have to listen. You're moving to another fucking place a year. You're gonna spend a year. You have to struggle for that year anywhere. Even if you have fucking money, unless you're like multi-million dollars, you have to sort of go through these hoops and do these shit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel you on that. I want to pivot a little bit into some more politics, though, because we were talking about fair market apartments. We were talking about how the rent is especially low this year. Landlords are locking themselves into very low rates, and the government is basically dictating how much they can increase the rent prices year after year. We're going to have some major issues. What are you going to say?
Because of the rent, the building that I have exclusive with.
Yeah. So Mito has an exclusive. He has a small exclusive portfolio of buildings in Queens.
I was gonna say offer another month free, but the person in charge of that building said, "Oh, maybe we can just reduce the rent." I was like, "No, that's a bad idea because that's gonna lose the value of the building. Rather offer another free month, keep the rent the same because when they renew, it's gonna be from the same amount that we left it at. Because if you reduce the rent at a certain point, because the building is rent stabilized, you're gonna have to jump to,
Exactly. So what my advice to landlords all along has been: give free rent, don't reduce the rate. And we had a client today came in. She was expecting to be paying the net rent every month. So super, like we've never seen prices this low. Super low priced apartment, $1,650. They were giving me a free month. I think it netted out over the course of the lease, netted out to be $1,528 or something a month. She wanted to pay $1,528 a month, and she said, "Well, I need to be paying $1,528 a month now. Giving me the last month free doesn't help me. We're in the pandemic now. I figure in a year we should be good." But I mean, back in March, we thought in 2 weeks would be good. So,
hey, listen.
All right,
The places the places I represent, you could the second month is free. So
It
if
doesn't
you have-
matter
if
when
you
the
have
month is
3
free. You
months-
just
It does.
cannot reduce
It
the
does.
price.
It does, because if you give the certified check and you're expecting the next paycheck to, amount,
Yeah.
so you can pay the next check. If you have second, third month free, that gives you enough to save in your savings. You're basically
Sure.
taking those 2 months and putting in the account.
Sure. Now, I want to talk about rent regulation and the government being in control of how much you can charge every month, the pros and cons of that. Do me a favor, just grab in the fridge and pass the drink in the freezer to Andres to pass out.
Which one?
In the freezer. So we have rent stabilization laws, we have rent control laws in the black bag. We have rent control laws in New York City, and they control how much we can charge for rent. They control how much we can increase rent. And I'm really curious what the pros and cons are and what the opinions of the pros and cons are on this. I really believe a bit more in fair market. And then you have something like coronavirus, which has a huge effect on what the market is dictating for rent. And right now you see a lot of people reducing it, but now they're afraid if they reduce it, they're never going to be able to increase it again because there's no fair market. So the reason we have the regulation is because rent prices grow and grow and grow, and people get priced out and they get pushed out, and things like gentrification and there's some negatives with people who live in an apartment, they're paying $1,100 a month, and the landlord's like, well, your lease is up, we want $3,000 a month. And you're like, well, that's almost a 300% increase. So, I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are on that. I want, in the comments, I want to see what people have to say. I'm watching the comments, so I'm curious what people's thoughts are. But what are your guys' thoughts on rent regulation? And
If there's no demand, there's no supply, right?
no, that's not true.
Yeah, it is.
If there's no demand, the supply exists.
Supply exists, but at a low price, very low price.
Well,
So if there's demand,
what are you saying? If there's no demand, you're saying that the price drops.
Yeah.
Okay.
100%.
But-
like right now, the
Mhm.
price has dropped drastically because there's no demand to live in a big
But
city.
I
what-
actually have the best case for this. I don't know if you guys know about the situation in Argentina. They're going to the biggest recession ever. And basically, the government allows you to buy dollars for certain amount of dollars. You can only buy $200 per month, I think it is. And then there's a price that is legally that you can buy it through the government.
Yeah.
It's 79 pesos per dollar.
Yeah.
But since it's illegal to buy more than $200 per month, there's a black market for it.
I don't-
So
I don't understand what you're talking about, buying dollars. What do you
hold on. So it comes to the man and all these things. So there's a
Okay.
black market for that.
For
And
what? What
For
are
the
we
for the dollars, from the dollars. Yeah. So
Or buying dollars?
yeah, hold on. I'm getting to his point.
Same thing in Bosnia. I never exchanged money in my town.
Just bear in mind, guys,
Yeah, this is the whole.
this is my first drink,
No.
and I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is that you're trying to
We're getting
explain.
there. We're getting there.
And, you
I'm
gotta
trying to
and
get
don't
there.
forget, you
Yeah.
got to speak up because the
No,
microphone is
I'm
over
trying
here.
to get there. So the thing is that there will always be
In your country, in
in
Ecuador.
Argentina.
Okay.
The
You've
government
never been there,
controls.
right?
Yeah. The government controls how much dollars can you buy
Okay.
to a certain price. So you can only buy $200,
U.S. dollars.
at $200
Okay.
at 79 pesos per dollar.
Mhm.
But there's a black market because a lot of Argentinians save their money in dollars, not in the regular currency.
Mhm.
So there's a black market, and they don't sell you a dollar at 79 pesos. They sell you a dollar at 150 pesos.
Mhm. So that's
You know,
like
there's a-
that's like
Okay.
subletting a rent-regulated
That's
apartment.
that's what we're getting.
Okay.
At. So
All right, well-
the demand and
Okay, so
So it's more subletting, I guess. What he's speaking of right now is there's more subletting going on, and rooms
Yeah,
for
exactly,
rent,
of course.
and leases, and there's like all confusion.
so you basically there's a lot. I have difficulty being fully on board with rent regulation because I think it defeats fair market. I do I do see the major downside with neighborhoods being destroyed because there's demand and the prices go up and the people that live there get priced out. But at the end of the day, when you're renting something, it's not yours.
They get priced out.
They can, yeah. If you're on a 12-month lease and you've been paying $1,100 a month,
right?
The lease is over.
Increase it to $3,000.
Well, what I'm saying, yeah, that's what we're talking about. So if we get rid of the laws, how bad do you get fucked?
No, we're not talking about those laws. We're talking about the new laws that are going into.
Well, I'm talking about all the laws. I'm talking about rent stabilization, rent control, and versus totally free market.
No, but at the same time, as a tenant, if I'm staying in an apartment that's $1,100, if a landlord comes in and wants to renovate the whole thing, all right, fine. You have an excuse to charge me whatever the amount is right now for your work that's being done, improving my living conditions in the apartment.
Sure, but what if you don't want to improve your living conditions? What if you're happy with how
paying $1,100?
My concern is what the definition of rent is, and I don't necessarily know that rent stabilization is a great thing. I do think because my biggest concern is just that people. I think renters do have too many rights.
Yeah,
I think renters have too many rights, and but I also think the landlords need to suffer the consequences of bad markets. Like right now,
but they are.
People are trying to move out and end their leases, and
like for example, Halland's Point,
Queens,
5 months free.
5 months free.
5 months free.
But you're paying a higher rate.
No, yeah, you're paying
at a higher rate.
5 months. You're just paying for what? 7 months to live there for a year.
Sure.
And you get a beautiful.
But let me. Here's my thing: is when you move into when you rent a car after 30 days, which is the longest amount of time you can legally rent a car, because otherwise it's leasing a car.
There's no like 10 days free.
But when you rent a car, it's not your car and you have to give it back. And after the 30 days, the price can change. Right?
Yeah, because you're giving it back.
But the way the rental laws work in New York City is that if you want to renew, the landlord has to charge you the same price plus a regulated if it's and that's what I'm talking about, is rent regulated. So the landlord has to charge you the same price plus a regulated increase, which is very low.
Yeah.
And I think that's crazy because some people are in crazy rent control apartments from the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s.
Sure.
And
but most of those landlords that had those buildings since the 70s and the 90s, they paid it off. So whatever
most
the money,
of them have.
So whatever money they get from like the 5 apartments that they have in the building that are rent stabilized, they're making up for it in the other, 25 other apartments that they have that are not regulated or not rent stable.
But what doesn't? Where is their right to charge a higher rent? Where does renting become ownership? Where does you move into someone else's place temporarily and then you can dictate the terms moving forward?
So am I selling it now?
No, I'm just talking about the general renting laws. I think when you move into a place for a year, and that's in 1984, and now it's 2011, because at the end of 1984, you chose to renew.
Right.
The landlord raised the rent by 2%. In 1985 came to an end. You renewed, they raised the rent by whatever percent.
Right.
86, 87, 88.
It does not make sense.
But they're regulated.
It doesn't make sense, but at the same time,
I want
keep the aesthetics of the city of New York.
To keep the aesthetics.
The
sure.
Culture.
Not right now.
So they turn to Dubai.
But I need a more logical, less emotional reason than to keep the culture, because that seems
stupid.
No, I wouldn't say it's stupid. I think I love New York culture. I love the culture of different neighborhoods.
But if you raise the rents, you wouldn't have that.
Well, no, you're
You
gonna
don't have that.
everything's going to
have
be washed out culture wise and things like that. So is that the simple reason? It's just culture?
No, it's not. Definitely not.
And what and who's tying a culture to a neighborhood? And how is that not racist?
I mean,
It's not racist,
for
but
the
racial.
For the longest time, Harlem was known for just putting black people in that specific place.
And then you
now,
had Spanish Harlem.
And then you have Spanish Harlem. And now, because my mom lives here for 24 years. And when she came to the U.S., she was like, where I live now, it's nothing what it's like now. Now it's clean. Washington Heights, Hamilton Heights, it's beautiful. It's super clean. It's full of diversity. We have Asians. We have Hispanics. We have blacks. We have whites. We have every single culture colliding in one. Colliding, but all of them getting along. They know that they're from Hamilton Heights. They don't go like, I'm black, I'm white, I'm from Hamilton Heights, and they clean the city. They keep it all clean. It's far cleaner than Midtown. If you go to Midtown, there's a lot of people doing heroin. There's a lot of people throwing garbage everywhere, and we have high risers. We have the Empire State Building right here. It's a landmark. And it's all dirty. It's all clean. I had a friend of mine who came to visit three weeks ago, and
I think
these people like, this is nothing what New York used to be when I first came here, which is like literally a year ago.
I think it's people that had certain types of jobs affording that rent, because the jobs, the wages that increase. So you got to keep a certain level of people here in the city that are certain.
Let me ask a question.
Salary.
If just run the scenario through your mind.
I still don't
if in 1980 we just did away with rent control, we did away with rent stabilization, where would we be now and what would the city look like?
Oh, it would be fucking fantastic.
You think?
100%.
Well, people would have been priced out.
Yeah.
And then
people
like it would turn to like generic, I'm going, Apple Watches everywhere. We're going to like a robot.
I don't think it turns into the Jetsons. I don't think it turns into I don't think it turns into the future. But I'm just curious.
Well, listen, it'll be another Dubai.
If you had a free market, does Dubai have regulation on things like that?
I don't know.
And then how big do the outer boroughs grow? And how much what's the spread look? What's the spread look like on people moving further out to the suburbs, further upstate? Maybe it strengthens our transit system because those are the workers in the city and they have to get to the city faster. Does our transit system suck because we keep the majority of the people using the transit system?
Yeah, a lot of people moving out because they can't afford to live here, so I'm going to move out and I'm going to travel here.
But they have to travel here for the infrastructure of the city to work, and for the infrastructure of the city to work, we have to have a good transit system.
I think I heard that
so that's
there's 8.5 million people living in the city of Manhattan, but 35 million people come to work in the city of Manhattan. Yeah. So in the max capacity, it will be 35 million people in the city moving in and out of New Jersey, the Bronx, Queens, Brooklyn to come to the city.
There's a lot of people coming here from New Jersey that are working.
And I personally, I come from a third world country, and I think that we have one of the best public transportation systems. Like the MTA is 24/7.
Oh, I thought you were confident.
We have a good MTA. We have buses. We have all these things that are 24/7. Not now because of the pandemic. They have to clean. They have to shut down at 1 and then they open back again at 5. But because they have to clean the whole transit system. But other than that, I've seen some places where they charge, I don't know, $2,500 that are not well renovated, that are not well, and that's where I believe people go and think like, oh, why am I paying $2,500 for an apartment that's not newly renovated? That's not, that's the incentive that landlords get.
Where though?
Some places in Washington Heights, some places in.
How big is the space?
The space is big. The space is big
so
compared to New York.
That's the thing.
Where is this?
This is basically Hamilton Heights, Washington Heights, where the space is a lot bigger.
You said compared to New York.
Compared to Chelsea,
compared to downtown.
Yeah, downtown Manhattan. Because in Chelsea you can pay for a 2-bedroom apartment that is literally, I don't know, 500 square foot, and it's a 2-bedroom apartment, 500
Dude,
square
you
foot.
get a $1,900 1-bedroom in Washington Heights, laundry, elevator. You can't even get a studio in Chelsea for that.
Well, we have somebody that's live that said her aunt has lived in the village for 50 years in a rent control apartment. I don't know if she's still listening, but I'm going to try to bring her on, and because I just have questions for that, and I'm really indifferent on this. I don't own property. I rent property. Looking at moving to Jersey. I work in real estate, so I see both sides of this. I represent landlords.
And then again, we have a different culture of people. We have a different generation that wants to rent more than they want to buy. Because if they rent, they don't have any attachment to the place. They can rent for 2 years in downtown, then they can move to Brooklyn. They can
let's see if she jumps on it. I don't foresee that happening, but I do want to get. I'm curious of the mentality when someone moves in and into a rent control apartment, what their expectations are, and if
their expectations are 0 to 2% your rent.
I mean,
that's it. That's
my thinking is rent is very akin to borrowing. So if someone's like, I want to borrow your car, and they're like, well, I'm just going to keep driving
unless they pay you.
They're like, I'll give you $50 to borrow your car for the weekend, and they're like, well, I'll give you $50, for the next week too. I'm like, well, no, I need it back now. Well, it's mine now. We already have this agreement. 50 is 50. I'm like, well, and then I'm like, I get the government involved. The government's like, well, next week you can charge them $51. And I'm like, but I need the car back. And then now you gotta buy your own car. Like, but now cars are costing $200 a week. And I'm like, well, but I was letting them borrow it. That's my issue with renting, and what I just want to understand the mentality where someone moves in. If they raised my rent, when I moved up into Harlem, my rent was $1,525, and I was subletting an apartment in Queens at $900 a month.
No way, $1,525.
$151.
At the Gold Fire building.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah, $151. I was paying $1,525, and then they raised it to $1,575, and then 16 something, and then it was, I think it was $1,795 or so when I moved out, and I moved into something that was around $3,000. But I moved because at that point I was looking at paying nearly $2,000, and then why am I living another 100 blocks north when it's just not worth it anymore. And I moved, but they continue to increase my rent. And
how often?
Every lease they increase my rent.
Like every 2 years or every year?
Every year they increase my rent.
Yeah.
And
they're allowed to do that.
And they were allowed to do that for the most part, but now they're not allowed to anymore because the new laws don't allow that.
It's still 0 to something percent. You're still allowed to do that.
It's like up to 3%, or I don't know the specifics, but I know that they're very limited with how much they can increase it. And that's, I moved out. They were increasing my rent. I lost the value, and I moved out. And now
you moved out.
I spent more money. I spent
expensive apartment. You didn't move out because you had
to. Not everybody's in that position.
I had to move out.
Not everybody's in that position.
God. So luxury apartment.
But
dormant apartment.
Some people may say, I have to move out. I have to move out to somewhere cheaper.
Right. And this was not the time that we're living in now.
And they would move further north.
Right.
And then if the same thing happened there over the course of 3 or 4 years, they may move somewhere even further north. They might go to Yonkers. They might go to Long Island.
Like, oh my God. They're increasing my rent. They're increasing my rent. They keep increasing my rent. I'm going to go out to an apartment that's $3,000. So 1,700.
So, but I lost the incentive to be there.
I mean, I understand the fact that you wanted to save, I don't know, 20 minutes of commute?
Listen.
That's 20 minutes of commute.
No, you have to understand me. I could have stayed there and
Yeah.
paid $2,000 a month, and now they're going for like $2,500.
And commuted 45 minutes rather
Exactly.
than like walking to work. Or
How long does it take you to come from your place, current place? To the-
Well, it was a different girl place then.
Door to door on the motorcycle, 6 minutes.
So if you had the exact same motorcycle,
30.
what? Nah, not
My
30
motorcycle,
20 minutes.
I
20
think
minutes
maybe
at most.
my best time might have been like 18 minutes or something.
20 minutes.
So,
So
but the
you're
point
paying
is, I was-
$1,000 more.
it was worth being there when I was paying a low price. As they increased the price, it wasn't as much worth being
So
was
there.
what
would
was the
you
benefit?
move
What
back
was the
for
benefit?
the same price, 17 something?
I don't think so. Because now you could get an Upper West Side.
Yeah,
An
now.
Upper West
no,
Side.
no, not the same building at all.
It was a very nice building.
It was a very nice building.
I get that, but it lost the value. And I look at rentals as fluid movement. And if you want to settle
You know how
down,
many availabilities they have there now?
no, you know,
Zero.
which is
Zero. Because what?
because they're good value.
And you lost the value.
apartment.
Well, my budget at the time afforded much
Increased.
higher.
No, then blame it on the fact that your budget
Thank you, Cindy.
increased, not that
Oh,
you got priced out of
listen,
your
it's-
apartment. You didn't get priced out of your apartment. Your budget.
I didn't get
wanted to
priced
move.
out. I didn't
Yeah,
get
because
priced
you
out
see the value of like
because I lost the
at that
value.
time. At that time.
But
Now
some
it's
other
different.
people may move and spend less money because they're getting priced out. Either way, as the price moves, you have to personally evaluate.
Yeah.
But the price moving is what affects you, and you have to move either somewhere that is now
No,
cheaper.
they definitely justify the move when you moved 100%.
However, you also have to understand that there's a new generation coming over, and this new generation doesn't want to own things. They want to rent things. They want to
Right.
lease a
Listen,
car.
that
They
generation
want
is
to
fucking
rent.
Stupid.
They want to rent. To,
No,
you know,
if you
what they
have
want, yeah.
the income, sometimes
exactly.
it's
No,
nice
exactly.
to not have
That's the thing.
responsibility.
A lot of people don't have the income to buy something, but they do have the income to rent something.
Right. And
So
that's
if,
wrong.
and
you should
yeah, exactly.
you should rent
but then again,
beneath
it's a
your
new generation.
means.
It's a
or
new
actually-
generation that is coming and colliding with the
Yeah,
old
and-
generation.
Of course, it's
The old
stupid.
generation wants to buy things and settle down. The new generation wants to rent things because they don't want any responsibility.
Well,
Well,
there's-
they still haven't heard.
When you're
Like,
the
they
owner-
still haven't learned at the age that we're living in now with COVID that they shouldn't do that.
But
But then again,
leasing,
when you are the owner-
think about a car. Leasing and owning a brand new car,
It's
Some
different.
people would
It's
rather
different in
lease,
property.
which costs more.
It's different in property.
It is, but with the lease,
Right.
you can change it out every 2 years or every
Right.
3 years.
And a car loses 75% of its
It's
value
different
in the
with
first 5
property.
years.
It's different.
In the first 5 years, the car loses 75% of its value.
It's different.
Okay, well, it is different because the property value typically
It goes up
increases.
all the time.
Yeah, one is an asset, the other one is a liability.
But a
It's
lot of
still-
people don't have that long-term vision
Exactly.
in ownership. Not only do they lack the
Again.
long-term vision, even if they had it, the barrier to entry is very high
Yeah.
because things cost a lot more now. Real estate
Why?
costs
And
a
then
lot
again, you
more
also
now.
have to understand that back in your times or back in the other generation, people wanted to settle at the age of 25. They
No,
wanted to
because
have
people
kids and
want like,
everything.
oh, what
Now
I want
this new-
now, what
this
I
new
want
generation-
now versus what I want in the future.
Now
What
this,
I want now is like, oh, I want the doorman, I want this and this and that. What I want in the future, and so they don't think about the future. It's what I want
No.
now, and the meantime, right now, what I want.
and
Well,
I'm not saying that it's bad or good. I'm
well,
just
what
saying
I
that
did
that's what's
was-
happening.
I moved into a rental so I could use that down payment to open a business. And I was simultaneously looking at buying a place, but I used the money in
Did
the
you
bank.
move in, like above your means or like close to your means? No, you moved into a place that was like
I moved
way
into an affordable
below
place,
means.
but I
where you were
used the
making.
money in my bank to open a business. So
Right.
that's why renting, in my case, was a lucrative financial decision.
Really,
Whereas-
if it's below your means.
It was below my means,
If
yeah.
it's below your means, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at apartments that were thousands of dollars more in the
Right.
building. I'm like, well, I don't necessarily see spending more money on a rental as a reasonable, logical
Right.
thing to do.
Unless your work is there and you're like making this amount of money.
So I feel like we really lost the political train.
yeah, we
on this one.
yeah,
Now we're just talking about rental
renting
prices.
and-
We're very Manhattan focused, but
So
I
many
think
minutes
I
we
think
got
renting
left.
in a lot of other markets makes sense too, if depending on what your financial setup is. If you have the down payment, but you can use that just like I did. You can use that down payment to invest in other vehicles, and the renting. At the end of the day, you know, you're spending a certain amount of money in interest when you buy.
Well, if you invest in a vehicle right now and
No,
sell it in a year,
I don't need a vehicle, a car. I don't need a vehicle, a car.
Yeah, but we're comparing two different things. We're comparing one asset and we're comparing one liability. A car will always be a liability.
About that. He's not talking.
And a house is always an asset. It will always increase in value.
So, I mean, for me, it doesn't make sense to buy a brand new.
No,
Unless you have a great amount of disposable income.
Yeah.
But then you know it's like going out to eat and spending
$1.
$1,200 on a dinner, which you could do easily. We could go out now. We could order a couple of steaks, a couple of bottles, 4 or 5 of us.
It's still gonna be $56, bro. Out of both gangs.
All right. We could get it. Many times we've been out and the bills have been in the 4 digits. I don't think I've ever been out. They've been in the 5 digits, but maybe you have. 5 digits. That's 9,000 into then you hit 10,000.
Where?
That's what I'm saying. I've never been to a meal that's cost in the 5 digits. I've been to 4-digit meals.
Oh yeah, I've never paid for the 5-digit one, but
I've been there.
I think it's a good place to have been to a 5-digit costing meal.
It wasn't the dinner. It was the drinks.
I think that's how it works.
Yeah.
That's how it works. In New York City, now when you want to order drinks, you have to. The governor requires that you order
That doesn't
food,
make any fucking sense.
and it can't be chips. It has to be.
Hold on, listen. You gotta walk in the place with a mask. You sit down. You can take off the mask, but then you gotta use the bathroom. You gotta put on the mask on. Listen, because the only way you cannot get this virus is if you sit down at a restaurant. You can't get it.
I honestly cannot wait until the conversation about this election, until the conversation about coronavirus is just something we don't talk about.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about where Barack Obama was born anymore. I don't want anybody to talk about what a fucking the election and Biden's son and Trump and his kids and
Hunter.
And I don't want people talking about the fucking coronavirus and wearing masks. I want to talk about it as a memory. And I don't want it to be
Like, I don't even remember what was like the highlight of 2019.
20.
2019. What was the highlight of that year?
Oh.
We had a terrific
For me?
year last year.
No. News-wise. Like, what was the theme that was going on?
It was Trump.
What was the no? Trump wasn't a highlight news-wise in 2019.
Trump was 2016. That was 2016. The highlight. That was.
Nobody was trending all the time long. Like, oh, we're gonna impeach him.
That's how fucked up this year is, because it made us forget about what happened in 2018, 19.
Also, we have information overload, and I'm waiting for the transition.
I know what happened to me. I don't know what the fuck happened.
I'm waiting for the transition when we have.
What was the biggest news that happened that you saw on TV on 2019? Exactly.
What I'm waiting for is when we hit an information overload as a society, and people start backing off of social media. People don't have Twitter, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. They just do one or the other, and they're not across all boards, and they don't interact as much. We don't follow as many people. We do a major compression.
People for their opinions.
We do a major compression of what you're following. Back in the day, your only outside contact was like newspaper and the 3 people you work with.
If we had this type of social interactions through devices, we would have had the same thing with every other president. Maybe.
Yeah, no, I think there's a very good chance we would have major chaos when it comes to elections and all this bullshit that's going on.
But it's just like too much. If you tune all that shit out, you're gonna be living your life the same way you've been living your life. That's it.
Well,
besides the virus, of course.
Well, we're also lucky enough to.
Of course.
We're also lucky enough to have grown up before social media, and before the internet, and before that shit. At least I have experienced a lot of that. I'm gonna pour another quick drink, and we're gonna top this one off, and I think we'll sign off relatively shortly. But I'm gonna hit the comments. I'm gonna hit the comments in a minute. I want to see what questions people have. Remember, guys, no questions are off limits. And again, we are getting ready to watch this debate.
Debate.
Another
Debate.
another hour and a half, and I'm gonna try to get this.
Because the debate's on YouTube now. All of a sudden.
I'll try to get this online quick. So I'm gonna hit the.
That's another thing, right? Before debates, never used to be on YouTube.
All right, guys, just bear with me. Why can't people see my face with a face mask? Why bother putting on lipstick? Have you seen girls' masks, by the way?
Yellow.
Oh my God, they're like
so yellow because of the makeup. The amount of makeup that they put and then they take the mask. Oh, I'm sorry.
well, it really the makeup color depends on makeup color depends on complexion. So really, yellow explains.
Every kind of makeup that you wear turns into yellow when
Or
you put
brown.
it on a white mask.
I was gonna say brown,
Well, lipstick.
but
Lipstick, mine is red sometimes.
so your lipstick.
No,
is
the
red.
chick that I go for.
All right, let me hit some more comments. There's no rent control in South Africa.
Oh, really?
It does not surprise me. Carol, who mentioned something about having an aunt in West Village, didn't join. She said her parents know more about it than she does. I would have enjoyed a female perspective and point of view on that rent control side. Carol.
Yeah, Carol.
We should talk about more drastic
Carol
topics, like
Ferrucci.
the one that we had the last time you were here. If it is 1 or 2 a.m. at a bar, and I'll take you to my apartment.
Start that again. What do you mean?
If I take you to
Well,
my
that's already
apartment,
too late. This was
New contract deal should be short period depending on actual.
But I
Hold up. New contract deals should be short period depending on actual situation. New contract deals are basically a year, but either way, once you move into a place over 30 days, it becomes a lifelong fucking contract, and the landlord loses ownership of that physical space, and that's kind of my biggest concern here. What's up? What's up, Tori? Tori says hi. I buy throwaway ones because your whole face is on the inside of the masks. I have a rent stabilized apartment. My family's been over there 50 years. Incredible. That's your home. I understand, Jan. Hold up. So Jan says her family's had a rent stabilized apartment. They've been there for 50 years. Jan, let me know where the apartment is. My thinking is when they signed that first year lease, at a certain point, they became the owners of that physical space.
for 1 year.
And my thinking is when the ink of that pen hit that paper, they now own that physical space. And why is that? Because if I let you borrow my car, when does my car become yours? If you rent my car from me.
Can the landlord at any point be like, listen, I don't want to renew your lease?
No,
because the laws are more
The laws,
stricter towards the
but what
tenant.
I'm saying is, where does the person who's renting it, where do they believe in their mind that property has transitioned from the owners to theirs? And I'm not picking sides, because I've been in my apartment. I've been in my apartment, and I feel like it's mine. But just like a co-op, you don't own the physical space.
Yeah.
You can't, in many co-ops, you can't paint the walls.
Yeah.
So in a lease, which is a lesser type ownership than a co-op because there's zero ownership, the people decide that that's their space forever. In a co-op, you can get kicked out of the building, and they'll dissolve your shares. You'll get paid out. But in a rental building, that doesn't exist, and rental is a lesser ownership than co-op ownership. So what I want to know is, Jan, I hope you're listening. At a certain point, your family put ink on paper, and they took possession. They put their belongings inside of someone else's property, but they've been there for 50 years. So they, to a certain degree, are going to be very reluctant to give the space up. In their mind is a certain type of ownership that's going on. If I let you borrow my car and you pay me to borrow it, at what point do I not get to have that car back? Do I not, as the owner of the vehicle, get to dictate when I get that car back? So at what point, when your family put that pen on paper, because the original agreement didn't agree that they never get to surrender it. It's the laws constituted that. At what point did they decide that they have ownership? And did they not decide that the laws dictate that but I'm sure they believe that they have full right to the property, and no one's coming between them and their bed when they put the key in the door.
And as a renter, you don't have as much of a responsibility as the owner. You're the renter, and something is wrong.
No,
with the
also
apartment,
if there's if they're the renter and there's a leak, if there's a leak or the stove doesn't work, it's not on them to replace it. So it's a really convoluted ownership structure when you don't actually own it. But
the owner,
as far as anybody is concerned, you put that key in the lock, that thing better turn, and you better have a bed to sleep on inside. So that's my concern. I want to go back to the comments real quick. My daughter's here. It's my home. Emotional attachment, sure, but I'm not talking emotion. I want to know. I want to know logics here.
Yeah, economics on it.
So, you think it's a good idea to cut mics off during the debate? So, Sari Caldwell says, do you think it's a good idea to cut mics during the debate? You don't think so?
Not really, because the moderator should be a more powerful person that should moderate them.
That's the reason why Joe Rogan should have been the moderator.
Oh, come on. Really?
All right, but here's what I want to say. You put a referee in a boxing match. The referee, hold on, listen to me. The ref.
Listen to a podcast.
Hey, listen to me.
Listen
to me. You put a referee in a boxing.
I agree with you, but like
when you're ready. You put a referee in a boxing match.
Right.
And the boxers, which are animals, savage animals, pumped up on testosterone, they're all hyped up. And those motherfuckers want to chew each other's eyeballs out. That referee has to divide them, but cannot. Is that a bad referee? I don't think so, because not always. I don't think
he steps in and does this.
And typically they back
100%.
off each other, except for the first time ever in this last debate.
No, but you're talking about boxing.
So for the first time in boxing,
these are words, these are fucking punches thrown in your face.
For the first time ever, the two boxers, one boxer eats the face off another boxer.
Come on, man.
One boxer eats the face off another boxer, and you say, well, the referee should have stopped them.
It's not the same.
It's like the UFC. It's basically like the UFC. If you're a referee at the UFC, you cannot do anything against these monsters. Yeah. These monsters, it's just all about their. It's all about. I know. But it's all about their self-control. If me being the monster
one lacks self-control,
there's no self-control.
If one lacks,
no, dude, this guy's punching him in the face 2, 3, 4 times after the referee stops it. So you can't like be like,
no, you have to understand that if you know how a battle begins. You talk shit about my family. You talk shit about whatever. Yeah. So I'm pumped. I'm ready to go there and kill you. So I go there.
Cancel control.
I go there. Listen, I go there.
I agree and cut you off.
But this isn't boxing, and what we have is the electronic ability to cut a mic. So this is boxing where you have the ability to have two brute motherfuckers come in and pull the boxers off each other and separate them.
You just have a wall that will
exactly.
get there and boom. You can no longer hear each other.
Yeah.
That's the best thing that can happen.
Like, yo, Trump, do you want to get punched in the face?
I'm agree. I agree with.
I don't think
because of who we are.
I think the rule is like, okay, maybe Joe Rogan should be the guy.
Because he can literally be like,
if you talk out of time, if you talk whatever, you just get slapped in the face or get punched in the face.
Yeah. Well,
and then you're like, oh no, and you can fucking.
I would like to see the Joe Rogan thing happen, but I actually don't think he would be a great debate moderator.
Oh, he would be great.
And I don't think he would navigate the conversation.
Last guy.
Well,
he interviewed.
Joe Rogan.
Bernie Sanders.
Joe Rogan typically, which we're
Bernie
struggling
Sanders.
with now with 3 people. Joe Rogan typically is one-on-one.
Yeah.
Typically.
Yeah, but the thing is,
they have 3 and 4 dudes.
Typically one-on-one, and it's much easier to regulate another person when it's one-on-one.
But you also have to have that manliness in you to actually control the room, and that's the thing that they're lacking. The manliness to be like, hey, listen, you had your time to talk. It's time for him to talk. And you look at me, they look at me in the eyes.
Unless there's a rule, you can punch him in the face.
And that's the reason why you have to be close to her.
There's no fucking button.
But look, think back about American politics and think about politics.
Like a reality show, because
we're talking about the last democracy in the world.
There are many people that have gotten in fistfights in the history of American democracy, and there are people that have challenged each other to duels. Isn't that how Alexander Hamilton died?
Yeah, that should have happened.
So and his son,
Andrew
Andrew Jackson. I don't know if that's how he died, but I don't know.
If you have conflicts, you should be able to settle it between.
But it's not that's not how people work, man. People don't fight out of confidence. People don't debate out of confidence. Most people.
No, like if you want like a certain.
I just
first have to
and
agree to a battlefield, right? Unless it's
well,
war.
and so we need to agree, 100%. So we need to agree if this battlefield will allow.
Yeah, exactly.
If this battlefield will allow for muta-mics.
No, I don't agree with that.
Well, then we have to agree in the battlefield. If you were you have to agree on the terms of the battle before entering into battle.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't agree with that.
And if one person agrees on so back in war, it used to be people would line up, different rows of people, hear me out, and shoot at each other, and okay.
That's in America.
And then they died. Well, also British culture or British history. So, but it just takes the first person.
That shot.
It just takes the first guy to. It takes the first British guy to go up to we have major time difference, but it takes the first British guy to say, hey, my troops agreed to line up 12 in a row, 30 rows, and we're just going to shoot at you guys. And the Spartans like.
What do you mean the Spartans? You
can't. Hear me out. And the Spartans, and hear me out. Hear me out.
Two cultures.
Hear me out.
There's no weapons.
Hear me out.
Shooting at each other, there's weapons.
Okay, hear me out. Hear me out. All it takes.
Come on, give me a break.
All it takes is a Spartans. It takes the Spartans to be like, all right, sure, cool. You guys line up. We're gonna do a lineup thing, and then they line up, and the Spartans are just like, and obliterate the people that are the British soldiers that are lining up. So it just takes that one person to cheat on the rules.
What do you mean cheat on the rules? We're agreeing on the field, right?
To begin with.
Right.
Yes.
That's what we're doing.
But when you agree and then somebody cheats, who's your audience?
You can't compare the two.
Well, that's what we just did. That's what we just did.
The Spartans, and you can't compare the British with guns. The 300 wouldn't survive if they had the 3 guns. Xerxes would have won that battle if he had guns.
Just one gun, one AK-45, it'll be enough.
Listen, if he had one gun, Xerxes would have been like, oh, let's stop it.
All right.
With that being said, listen, I believe the only reason why Trump got elected is because we took him as a joke. We took him as a joke. Every single news media, every single one was like, oh, this is a joke. He said this, he said that, and they all 100%. Laughed about it.
They
all laughed about him and the things that he said and how stupid he sounded and how dumb his tweets were and whatever. And I remember Trevor Noah, all of these people used to just make him a clown, and that make him bigger. That actually spread all over.
When you look back, is it as the same as the media portrayed it? Like they say, Donald Trump is a racist. He said all Mexicans are not good. From The Office, at the same thing.
Yeah, if you only.
I never liked the dude, but I'm like neutral. So I'm like, show me the article. Show me where he says this.
But show me the whole thing.
And he never said that shit.
Never said what?
Never said like all Mexicans are bad people.
It's a
bad hombres.
Yeah.
Hombres.
Yeah, hombres are
There's
people.
some bad hombres that come into the country. Of course.
Yeah.
Every country that there's immigrants coming through, there's some fucking bad people that come through. In Bosnia, there's a minimum of people that come through.
Where's my black people?
But some people punch old women. Some people stab people.
Not that just being a man.
You know. Being a man is stabbing an old woman in the chest. Really?
Different culture.
So I'm gonna sign off on that. We got some bad hombres out there.
Some bad hombres.
No, you just have to understand. You have one thing is your brain gets really to if you want to hear something that your brain wants to hear, you're gonna go and gravitate towards that news. But if you're a neutral
level, yes.
If you're a neutral human being, you actually read upon it. But it's so hard to read. It's so tiring that you just read the headlines and you're like, I agree with that, then I'll go with it.
You don't need to
I don't agree with that, and then I'm not going with it. So,
you don't need to read. You just gotta look at it logically.
But there's not enough logic people. There's not enough smart people. There's not enough.
As an individual human being, logically, what makes sense? You gotta look at that.
I'm going to enjoy my last sip of Buchanan, supplied by Andreas Battaglia, connoisseur of fine spirits, sommelier, and all-around passionate human being. We also have Midhead Josic, Mito, real estate extraordinaire, Queens. You're not Queens native, are you?
No.
Okay.
I'm the Bosnian native.
Bosnian native,
Grew up in the Bronx.
Queens real estate, grew up in the Bronx. He is he's one bad hombre. All right, guys. Thank you for joining us. SipTalk episode 48. We'll catch you guys soon. Cheers.
Cheers.
Right. That was it. Hopefully we didn't drink too much, and most of that made sense. I did my best to corral the conversation into one place. But let me know what you think. Let me know what you want to hear about, and just show some love, man. All right. See you guys.
I like PBR. I just got priced out of it.